be advised, the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Everything we listen to, everything we watch, everything we read, everything we wear. Behind all our favorite things, there is an author, an artist, an inventor. Genuine, real, original. Pushing the limits of imagination and innovation for our comfort, our enjoyment. Making life interesting. Enjoy their efforts, respect them. They help shape our world.
Why shouldn't I be an artist?
What's up, Marco?
My parents say that I'm bound to starve. They got no respect for me.
My uncle and Al made fun of me too when I say I wanted to be a painter, but my parents stuck by me.
Lucky you. Without the arts, human beings would be less human.
But still, there are people who don't consider art to be work, so they have no idea of the respect the authors deserve.
Authors have the right to live off of their work. You're going to starve, music man. You'll see. Wrong, because I already know how to earn respect. Nonsense. That's just talk.
Hi guys, what's going on?
Hi, Julie.
What a surprise to see you here. Can an artist make a living from his art?
Of course, thanks to copyright.
What is that?
Think, Marco, you're walking down the street and you see a house or a car that you like. Can you just take it?
Of course not. Only if it's mine, or if the owner lets me.
That's it, because those things have an owner, right? If you compose a song or write a book, what are you in relation to it?
The author.
Well, the author is the owner of his work. It's his because he created it. To do that, he worked hard, investing time, effort, talent, and often his own money.
Okay, and no one can take away property without the owner's permission.
The only one who can dispose of a work by selling or hiring it, allowing it to be reproduced, licensing it, and so on, is the author.
So if I create a work, I can make money out of it, just as I can make money out of a house or car.
The difference is that houses and cars are things you can touch.
That's why they're called physical goods.
But songs, poems, novels, dances, and so on are intellectual creations. They are things you cannot touch.
The intellectual creations are intellectual goods.
And all goods, both physical and intellectual, have owners whose rights should be respected.
How do you know so much about it?
I went to the copyright office and they gave me this for sure.
It's about copyright.
We already saw the main part. 1. The value of creativity. Creativity makes the world go round. 2. The importance of remembering that the author is the owner of his work. 3. Because of his creation, the author has rights that have to be recognized and protected.
But can anyone be an author?
Only human beings are capable of producing intellectual work.
So an animal or machine or an institution can be an author. But aren't there other kinds of authorship?
Yes, there's also joint authorship, when 2 or more people work together to create a work. The authorship of pseudonymous works, written under an assumed name, that of anonymous or unsigned works, and that of works created for an employer.
What does copyright actually protect?
Copyright protects creation in the form of literary and artistic work, whatever their nature, merit, or purpose.
But if I buy a CD of music, what rights do I have?
You're allowed to listen to it.
But if I'm running a business, can I play the music to attract customers?
Only if you pay for the use. Remember, buying the CD means listening to it is your only right.
So if the works are property, can they be inherited?
Yes, copyright lasts the whole of the author's life and 50 years after his death. In many countries, it can be as much as 70 years.
But then what?
Anyone can use it and its reproduction is free.
What if someone else then says the work is his?
He can't. The author's moral rights, his authorship and control over the work go on forever.
But pirates, they don't respect the author's right. They reproduce and sell their work without paying for it.
Pirates!
And those who plagiarize don't respect the author's right either. They copy other people's work and then they claim they are the authors.
Plagiarize!
That's stealing. Piracy and plagiarism are wrong.
That's right. Both are infringements of copyright and that's a crime.
But what about the art history professors who use works of several authors in his class?
There's no problem. They are used at school for educational purposes and not to make money. You can also reproduce small fragments of a work to clarify an idea as long as you mention the author and the source. That's the right of quotation.
So, can we do something later?
No, thanks, Vangelos. I already have a date with Marcus's parents.
What are you going to talk about?
They asked me to talk to them about copyright.
Great! Tell them that we, the authors, have a future.
Present and future.
Hey, I think I'm going to be an author.
The law is on our side.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Intellectual Property. I'm your host, Attorney Sarah Sugitan. You've just seen a short animated film brought to us by the World Intellectual Property Organization and the Republic of Korea's Funded Trust for Copyright. Copyright meaning the author's, artist's rights, and this pertain usually to literary and artistic works. And we have here tonight as a guest, more than a guest, a resource speaker who's been with the group of Mr. Harry Tambuatco here on GNN for several years now. He's a noted historian with about 7 authored works on history. He has 2 doctorate degrees on education and the other one on history. Dr. Frank Grego. Good evening, Dr. Grego.
Hello, good evening, Attorney.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us in the show tonight. And also, I'd like to acknowledge that you are the editor-in-chief of Congress Magazine.
Correct.
Yes, so how long has your magazine been in place?
20 years.
20 years. And now you're into producing films on history, Philippine history in particular.
Yeah. It's a good thing you mentioned that. This is a new venture.
So
with
from-
Harry Tambuatco, of course.
So how you've been in the production stage of this historical documentaries,
Right
so to
now,
speak.
I already have finished video footaging 7 episodes.
7 episodes.
And by the time I complete 13 episodes, Harry and I would already go into showing.
You've mentioned, we've mentioned that you are an author of several books on history, and as an author, you have copyright over your works. These books that you have published, are they already available in the market? Are you in the process?
In fact, the latest is now in the market, and I'll be giving you copies of this History of the Philippine Congress. But actually, Attorney, I don't believe in copyright.
Interesting.
Because to me, that is selfishness or greediness. Why don't we share the properties of our intellect to the people for their information, education, and absorption of, knowledge. Yeah, I don't believe in it. As a matter of fact, when the reorganization commission was overseen by Congressman now, Luis Villaperte. Remember that the reorganization of the government of today after the takeover of President Cory was authored by Congressman Villaperte. He reorganized the entire structure of government from the time up to the time before. After the declaration of martial law.
So there was reorganization.
Yes, and this intellectual property, I blame him as a matter of fact, because why did he make it only as an office Intellectual Property Office.
Yes, of the
Instead of a commission, an administration or authority. Because the functions of the Intellectual Property Office, I know, is gargantuan. It involves not only the properties of the intellect of the Filipino people, but even the properties of
the state.
of the whole world. The thinkers, the intellectuals of the world, who in turn would make up
Register.
some linkages with the intellectual property owners of the Philippines.
When you say that you are against copyright, it means that for you personally, you'd rather democratize, for example, your authored books and your movies that you're producing at the moment, rather than keep a monopoly on it for a price.
Yes.
Meaning that only those who can pay can have access to your works.
As a matter of fact, in my books, you'll notice that there is a public notification there that you may not go to jail, you may not be fined if you copy this any portion of this book, as long as you quote the author and the page where you have copied. You are free to copy, but give a credit to the author. Just by saying, according to Frank Grego, in his book, and then name the book, he said on page this and that.
Just acknowledge that
That is
it came from you.
democratization, as I've said, democratization of the property of my intellect. Instead of going to, pardon me, you may be hard because I know you are an advocate of intellectual property ownership, but there is a syndicate in the IPO. Yes,
In our office.
I know. I
Okay.
remember, attorney, that I've been a newspaperman, a media man for 39 years now. No? 18 years in the dailies, 20 years in the magazine, and running to more than 3 years now on TV.
So you were there when the IPO was born, by law, of course.
No, not yet, because I'm too young. Because the Intellectual Property Office started when the American regime came in 1901. This was one of those passed by the Philippine Commission, creating the Bureau of Patents, Copyrights, and Trademarks. Yes, remember? As a matter of fact, this used to be under the Department of Finance and Justice.
In fact,
I'm talking now of history.
In fact, I'll go a few years earlier. In 1898, there was in fact a law already passed by the Queen Regent, Maria Cristina of Spain, extending the same trademark law in the country. So,
Kasundo tayo.
yes, and so as far back as 1800s and early 1900s, this
Yes.
system was put into place, planted
Yes.
in our laws.
Yes. I agree with you. That is why, if we democratize, this is the second time I'm borrowing your word, democratization of the property of the intellect, we will be sharing our knowledge to people who could not afford to pay some or buy some
Books,
photocopies
yes.
of the book, or buy the book, or in their researches, in their thesis, dissertation, they're free to copy. They should not be charged by, there is a group that acts as watchdog of the IPO. And I think the IPO itself is running after those who would violate, no?
Copyright.
Yeah, and I think this should be amended. Let the people copy. Let those who are interested copy what is the property of one's intellect, as long as he should be quoted.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me put this into perspective. Under the law, while intellectual property is a form of property like real property and personal property, and I think this is the first time that we're hearing an author who actually has a waiver in his published book saying that you are authorized to copy and you will not go to jail nor pay a hefty amount as a fine for photocopying and sharing his work. So that is one of the prerogatives of an owner of intellectual property. In the same way that if you own a car, you can let anyone borrow it, you can democratize the use of that car, specifically by waiving your rights of possession or ownership over that property. And in fact, all authors can do this as a way of democratizing your work, meaning sharing your work to those who are less fortunate or do not have access to your intellectual property. And by that, you get to share knowledge. So that's a way of exercising intellectual property negative. Instead of you being possessive over your work, you can choose to share it and waive your particular rights over intellectual property. And here, Dr. Grego is an example of that, an author who is exercising a sort of waiver.
Intellectual democratization.
For intellectual democratization, provided that you get quoted, provided you quote him, of course, when you use his work. You cannot copy. Of course, for example, I bought your book or I photocopied it, and then I borrowed your words and then say on air na this is what I said, this is by me. That is not allowed. So for you, that's your policy when it comes to your works, your books in particular.
Advocacy.
Advocacy. And also to quote you, do not plagiarize.
Yes.
It's one thing to share a copy of your book, it's another thing to plagiarize your work. Meaning, when we say plagiarize, we're saying people who make other people's words appear like it's your own. So that is unethical. For you, that's unacceptable, in spite of democratizing the use of your intellectual property.
Another thing that should be clarified to the public, Attorney, is who really has the right to a works. When I say works with S, we refer to the works, meaning the art, the book, or
the
any
book,
creation.
the songs, the music, yes.
Yes, works yan. No? We should also educate some of our listeners, because some believe that when you say works, that's plural of work. No. When you specifically say works, works of art, works of publication, creative, intellectually created works. Now, there is always a raging conflict between who owns the copyright or the right itself, the author or the publisher. Because some publishers, and this is very common, Tony, this is very common, some publishers would always encroach on that right from the author. You know, the publishers are those who print, those who spend for the production of a book.
And distribution.
And distribution. They are publishers. But the real owner of the right is the author, the writer himself. This case was decided in the case of Nelson Navarro, the famous, Nelson Navarro, the one who went to China during Marcelo. He wrote a book on the history of the late Emmanuel Pilaes. No? It was a historical book. Upon commissioning by the heirs of Emmanuel Pilaes. Now, some way, somehow, he got paid only one half, and he was not able to get the other half because there were some troubles in the family. Now, the heirs were trying to claim that we have the right to this book, even if you
are the one commissioned to write it.
Yes, we commission you, we paid you for this. And this case has reached the court. No, they contested it. Nelson Navarro as owner.
Dr. Grego, before you give the conclusion away, we're going to pause for a short break. We'll be back with Dr. Grego's answer to this case.
Okay.
Everything we listen to, everything we watch, everything we read, everything we wear. Behind all our favorite things, there is an author, an artist, an inventor. Genuine, real, original. Pushing the limits of imagination and innovation for our comfort, our enjoyment. Making life interesting. Enjoy their efforts. Respect them. They help shape our world. Everything we listen to, everything we watch, everything we read, everything we wear. Behind all our favorite things, there is an author, an artist, an inventor. Genuine, real, original. Pushing the limits of imagination and innovation for our comfort, our enjoyment, making life interesting. Enjoy their efforts, respect them. They help shape our world.
Yo, this is Mr. Lover, bombastic, up front and personal. Utter. Shaggy! Yeah.
I think that being an ambassador for reggae, it doesn't just fall in my hands. I think any artist that brings this music of dancehall or reggae outside of the airports or the shores of Jamaica, so to speak, is automatically an ambassador. Jamaica would probably benefit more from music than even in any other country, because the whole thing about Jamaica, its whole cultural background is what sells it more so than anything else. There will be revenues that can be revenues brought in if it's organized. Would it make me an ambassador for copyright? Well, I'm always for copyright at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Copyright laws in Jamaica is extremely important. You know what I mean? That is your pension. That is what it is. It is your pension. And I'm willing to work with anyone that basically want to implement these laws. The government could basically do that. You know what I mean? And help within the creative process, and set in place certain laws that protect these artists and create what is known as our pension, you know, which is what we are lacking within the reggae fraternity, in my opinion. We all are affected by illegal downloading. You know, I mean, it's the nature of the business. I mean, like I said, technology is one, you know, and that is the harsh reality of it. The way to stay fresh is to always be innovative and a little bit eclectic. Go against the grain.
Yo, Mr. Lover, say yeah. Pay attention. Utter. Shaggy!
Alright, that was Mr. Bombastic Shaggy telling you what he thinks of copyright. Our topic for today is, of course, copyright. You're still with me, attorney Sarah Sugitan, and joining me tonight on the program is Dr. Frank Grego, noted historian and now producer of several documentaries on Philippine history. Yan, before we go back to the case that Dr. Grego was alluding to before the break, I'd like to make a public service announcement. All of you who have a stake or need to follow up your cases or files with the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, it will be moving on to its new location by May 16 at World Finance Plaza building. That's located in number 28 Upper McKinley Road, McKinley Hill Town Center, Fort Bonifacio, Taguig City. Again, by May 16, the IPO will be moving on from Buendia to number 28 Upper McKinley Road, McKinley Hill Town Center, Fort Bonifacio, Taguig City. Its trunk line will still be the same, 238-6300, and call Local 514 if you need to register your trademark. Before we go back to Dr. Frank Grego, I'd like to thank the World Intellectual Property Organization, the Philippine Intellectual Property Office, and David Salon, the best in European hairdressing. So, Dr. Grego, before the break, we were talking about the biography of Dr. Emmanuel Pelaez, is that correct?
Yeah.
And his life was commissioned, at least he commissioned a writer to write a biography.
Yeah.
Or his family commissioned a certain
because
biographer.
the family would like now to continue the publication. But the author is trying to hold it because he was not yet paid for the other half. He's not demanding that he should be fully paid first before the publication. Yeah. But the heirs say that we own this. We are the owners. But the author is saying that he is the author, he has the right because he was the one who created.
He wrote the biography.
The story. And this is good. The writer won already in the lower court. And this will be elevated. This has already been elevated to the appellate court. And this will be a good jurisprudence the moment it is finally decided.
Definitely. Usually, biographies po, they are published under the name of the biographer. the writer. For example, Hillary Clinton's biography has been documented by a writer, and usually when you see it in the bookshelves, it is not by Hillary Clinton, it's by the writer, the one who documented that celebrity's life. So, in all likelihood, what do you think? Will the writer win in this case, or the publisher?
I believe that the real owner of the right still be the author, because he is the creator. He merely created the story of the subject, but not the subject creating the story for himself, but by the writer. Yeah, and
besides, they have an agreement that they're going to pay this particular author a certain amount of money for his work, for putting together this biography.
Correct, but the agreement did not specify as to who would really own. Yes,
okay. So that's the main issue.
Yeah,
Who owns the copyright?
There was an oversight on that, because actually, before you're promoting intellectual property in the Philippines, this is a neglected, although very valuable property, but neglected, because nobody would pay attention to property right, intellectual property right. Unlike real property right, everybody quarrels and they would even kill each other for acquisition of property. Now, it's only now that the people are getting conscious. And I think the whole people should be thankful to your crusade, to your campaign for intellectual property. But you should also, attorney, crusade for the syndicate inside the intellectual property office. Because when you apply, somebody is there saying, hindi pwede ito, meron nating nauna. But immediately, he or she would inform the interested party or the applicant. This happened in the drug, the
patent over Lipitor,
yes,
I think.
There's
a pending case.
The advocacy of sino nga itong yung sinasabi nilang bading pero hindi naman.
Okay, Mr. X.
Yung senador na yung nagkumandidato nga na natalo.
Okay, that's his advocacy, this particular senator.
Yung sinasabi nilang bading pero hindi naman. Yung nakapangasawa ng sino ba yun?
Ano po yung, ano yung...
Taga-media na babae.
Ano yung, yung advocacy po niya?
Oo, ganun din si Pagdanganan. Si Obet Pagdanganan, when he was chairman of the PTTC. And there was also...
And their advocacy is to democratize patents?
To shorten the length of time of patents. Because when one would like to import drug, say from India, to lessen the price. You know, this controversy about
Cheaper Medicines Act. You're referring to the
Cheaper Medicines Act, yeah. That came because anyone who would go there to apply, yung mga pharmaceutical companies, the multinational pharmaceutical companies have their own men. They're in the IPO saying, hindi pwede ito, mayroon pa nito, hindi pa ito pwede. That tried to dissuade other importers. But when this was passed as a law, the Cheaper Medicines Act, and then open importation na, nagkaroon na tayo ng importation from India, Pakistan. You know, India is the biggest manufacturer of antibiotics.
So in effect po, nagkaroon na mas maraming players in the industry.
And that was also the discovery of the syndicate inside the IPO. Please also proceed on that.
Okay,
That
so
should
we
not
will
happen
have
now.
to look into the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, or intellectual property is a form of limited monopoly under the Constitution. You are granted a copyright, a trademark, or a patent over your intellectual creation for a limited period of time. For example, copyright sa books, you own it for your lifetime until 50 years after death. In fact, the IPO has started to accept copyright registration, and last Friday, April 29, we inaugurated this service in the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines and issued copyright certificates over the paintings, of the former President Corazon Aquino. Yan. So, ang first registrant po namin for copyright, for a certificate of copyright is the foundation, the Aquino Foundation, over the late President's paintings. And now we also, aside from that, we accept applicants for trademark registration and patent registration. And Dr. Grego was referring to, of course, the patents over medicines. So, hindi lang po mga gadgets ang nire-rehistro natin or pinoprotect by patent. There is also the pharmaceutical industry, their products, and there have been, you were pointing to that legislation, in particular the Cheaper Medicines Act, in line with his advocacy to democratize intellectual property. And as far as I know, the IPO po, one of their mission for this year is to democratize intellectual property, in as much as a lot of people don't understand what it is and how much it affects our daily lives. So the IPO has been crusading for police powers. Ayan, so maybe I'll ask you to comment on that. Do you think it's a good idea to give the IPO enforcement powers under the law?
Yeah, the IPO Act, the IPA,
IP code.
IP code should be amended to put more teeth in your office. And that amendment should carry the expansion. Bakit office lang? Pag sinam office, ang liit. Samantala, ang laki-laki ng IPO. And one thing interesting I noticed in IPO, no, is a lawyer becomes an international lawyer even if he has no license to practice in Switzerland, in the States, or anywhere. If he is a lawyer of a company which has some branches in other countries, take note of this, attorney, no? He is authorized to practice in other countries in representation of his company here when it comes to cases of intellectual property violation. I'll cite you some international lawyers, in quotation mark, na? Dante Marcoleta, Congressman Marcoleta, practiced for so many years before becoming congressman as an international lawyer because of his being a lawyer of a company which has been running after the violators of
Intellectual
the patent.
patent.
Another, Congressman Predinel Castro, became also an international lawyer because of this. And the one that I know also, but he died already about 5 years ago, yun si Benildo Hernandez of the Hernandez CICIP.
CICIP
Yeah,
office.
ganon. Siya ang in charge dyan. Imagine, no license to practice in the bar of a state in the United States, but he would go there to fight for his company. And he is authorized.
For his company na based in the Philippines.
Yes.
Which is a Filipino
which
company.
has also some, interlinkage, multinational. For example, you are the lawyer in the Philippines of, say, Procter & Gamble, and there is also a Procter & Gamble in India or Singapore or anywhere. And since you are involved in it, you can be commissioned to represent the Procter & Gamble there in other countries.
And I think there is reciprocity when it comes to international law practice. Lawyers of companies who own intellectual property abroad and are litigating their interests here can also practice for a limited or a specific action. That includes, of course, intellectual property rights violations. And as Dr. Grego is pointing out, it's a very specialized, highly specialized field of law. And lawyers can go international via this practice.
And they are highly paid.
Highly paid.
And you are on the right track. You're becoming an expert in intellectual property.
When it comes to intellectual property, as we said, it's two-way. There is reciprocity in as much as we are consumers of foreign owned and created intellectual property. Pilipinas din po ay nag-generate. So we create our own intellectual property that is also world-class and well-known. So in as much as other countries have this first-class commodity, the Philippine country will also have this intellectual property as a prime, how do you call that, profit generator in the future. May isa lang tayong invention somewhere, or our very own trademark or our very own work. Yan, maging Harry Potter lang natin yan, or liken it like
Harry
Tamboto.
One thing, attorney, that you made mention of paintings, no?
Yes, paintings.
Let me refresh your mind on this. You remember Tugak, the comedian, no?
Yes, performer.
He would buy paintings from the upstarts and those who have no much money to sustain for himself. They would paint, but they are good painters. No, they would paint and sell his products to Tugak. He had a
Gallery.
big pwesto in Harrison Plaza. The condition is you will already be paid in advance. On condition that you should put there as the byline of the painter, say, pick ba? Pick o pick? P-E-C-K yata yun o P-I-K? Peck, I think Peck Pinyon. That's the name of Tugak, the comedian. And he was selling the paintings in his name. After all, bayad din niya. And he would distribute that in Cebu, in Bicol, all over the country, because he had a network of distributors. He was capable. Now, I pity those people. Yeah, because out of necessity, they would already sell. They could easily convert their intellectual property, that painting, into cash.
Into cash. Short term po.
Oh, it's short term.
And that's one aspect of copyright. Well, when we say copyright, we have moral rights, which is, of course, you cannot plagiarize me and you cannot take away my name away from my work. And then the second aspect is economic rights. Like you waived your economic rights over your books. And in this particular case, the painter waived his or her moral rights, meaning yung kanyang relation to the work as an author, as the father, the originator, or the mother even of that particular painting, and named the work as if that was created by Mr. Pinyon.
But I would suggest that since you are going into police authority or power of the IPO, you should also include that.
To address.
Because we have to protect these small-time painters, to protect their right. It could be negotiated by putting the name of the painter, or maybe double byline. Peck Pinyon, the buyer.
The buyer, and then the
author.
Signature of the painter.
Pwede gano'n na rin. Parang tawag doon, conjugal property na in quotation marks.
What is your comment on the Philippine status in the U.S. Trade Representatives watch list? As you know, before, in 2008, we are in the top, we are in the priority watch list. And for 2009 and 2010, we have maintained, we have been promoted into just the ordinary watch list. So may reversed relationship po dyan. But so in other words, we got promoted into being just in the ordinary watch list, and hopefully we will get removed from that list soon. Do you think this is possible? Is this solvable?
Before I comment on that, I am reminded of a bill along that line, you mentioned, filed by Congresswoman Marivic Alvarado. Upon inspiration, of course, of her husband, the governor of Bulacan, Willie Alvarado, to dig deeper into this, because he would, in this bill, he would be protecting not only the interest of the Filipinos, but also all over the world, because this would seem like really an international community of ownership of intellectual properties, along the line of complementation. Meaning, what is protected there should also be protected there, even if there is no provision to that effect in the international property code and in the national
intellectual property
code. Because there are two, di ba? May international, mayroong local. So in case of conflict between the national and local, the bill of Alvarado would come in.
So that addresses that gap in terms of Filipino intellectual
yes.
property generators who are abroad.
Correct.
So if they are there and then they create their intellectual property there, their artwork, it's still ipso facto registered here,
Correct,
more or
correct,
less. So Dr. Grego, can you please promote your books and your upcoming documentary to our listeners? Where can we view them in the future, and what are your plans for your intellectual properties?
Yeah, this television production, you know, Harry has been helping me acquire a lot of equipment, filming equipment, and we were able to gather already a lot, more than enough, to produce live action movies. But not the.
Are you going to get into that? Action movies from Dr. Frank Grego Productions.
Not really movies for entertainment, but this one is historical events. For example, we will be dramatizing the history of the Philippines before the coming of the Spaniards. What were they doing? How come Lapu-Lapu became the chieftain of that portion of the Visayas? And then the Spaniards came, the galleon trade came. This is very interesting for our young to really know the Philippines as early as 12,000 years ago.
Okay.
Because normally the history of the Philippines starts from 1521,
Yes,
the coming
so
of Magellan.
16th century.
We are going back far up to
Farther than that.
12,000 years. That's it.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Grego, for joining our show tonight on intellectual property. I'd also like to promote this news magazine. It's called Opinion. I write a daily column on, of course, intellectual property, and pretty soon on elections, since the ARM elections are drawing near and we don't see any postponements that are likely to happen in the following months. Again, we'd like to thank the support of the World Intellectual Property Organization, the IPOPHIL, which is moving to its new address in McKinley Hill in Taguig City. Again, its trunk line remains the same. It's 2386300 for all of you who need to register your patents, your trademarks, and now your copyright. So if you have a thesis, you have a melody, a composition, a PowerPoint presentation that you'd like to register, please do so with the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines. Check out the website. It's www.ipophil.gov.ph. And also, I'd like to acknowledge the support of David Salon, the best in European hairdressing. Next week, join us again right here on Intellectual Property.
Everything we listen to, everything we watch, everything we read, everything we wear. Behind all our favorite things, there is an author, an artist, an inventor. Genuine, real, original. Pushing the limits of imagination and innovation for our comfort, our enjoyment, making life interesting. Enjoy their efforts, respect them. They help shape our world.